I get it. I've been gone for a while. Look, a lot has happened to me in the past year, okay? I mean, I finished my first ever DnD homebrew campaign. I also got a new job, bought a house, and got married. But really, who can explain where the time went? With Campaign 1 down, the time came for me to begin Campaign 2. And although I'm having a great time designing this sort of fantasy Fallout tabletop setting in a post-apocalyptic USA, I find myself once again confronted with my least favorite thing to manage as a dungeon master. Well, beyond everyone's constantly changing work schedules. I'm talking about the economy. More specifically, gold. Let's level with the premise of this video. Gold in D&D is frustrating, and I hate using it. But I don't think I have much of a choice. I'm not really going to offer a lot of wacky solutions here. I just want to rant about my perception of currency in D&D as written. Now, when I use the term gold, I'm referring to what most people think of in terms of a common currency for the setting of Dungeons & Dragons. Sometimes referred to as GP, gold is one of several non-standardized value indicators used throughout the game. And when I say value indicators, I do not mean coins. Copper, silver, electrum, gold, and platinum may be divided into units called pieces, but those pieces are not the actual physical coins in the game. They are a representation of value. Wealth may come in the form of coins or gemstones, trade goods, art objects, animals, or property. In fact, coins are not used by members of the peasantry, and they're not used by nobility. Quoting here, only merchants, adventurers, and those offering professional service commonly deal in coins. And when I say coins, I am not referring to a single standardized currency. Several different forms of coins can and do exist, and the value of those coins is inconsistent depending on where you are. Take, for example, the Waterdeep toll, I think I'm pronouncing that right, which is worth 2 GP in Waterdeep and worth nothing outside of it. Or the Silvery Moon Electrum Moon, which is worth 1 gold piece in that city and 1 EP everywhere else. Which is also not to be confused with a Silvery Moon Eclipsed Moon, which is 5 EP in the city and 2 EP out of it. Do you see where I'm going with this? The point here is that currency in D&D doesn't obey a universal standards, which, while accurate to how a world would work, is a ridiculous thing to have to worry about in a tabletop game. The Dungeon Master's Guide suggests that different forms of currency provide another level of detail, but warns against undue complexity when creating coinage. Coins, art pieces, gemstones, look, undue complexity is going to enter any game where your method of tracking value depends on keeping track of several forms of non-standardized currency. By that, I don't mean having to decide whether a stingy merchant is hiking up the price of a magic item. I mean having to decide whether that merchant is going to even take your money in the first place. And when I say money, hell, I could mean art pieces. Art pieces are very much like money in this book. Without a standardized unit of value, how am I to effectively utilize value as a tool within my game? So I hear you, every DM I've ever played with. Easy, just standardize the currency. No gemstones, no art pieces, no crescent coins or bitcoins, just good old-fashioned gold coins based with value on that unit. It's an easy switch that should help me contextualize the GP, right? Well, it helps, but it doesn't really solve the problem for me. Let's do an experiment. Put aside the adventuring gear cost table for a second and tell me, what does a coin mean to an average person in the D&D setting? Let's use the gold piece, which is the reference unit of measurement in the book, even though, again, it's not commonly used in the setting. What is that standard value supposed to mean when contextualized against the rest of the world? What does that chest of gold in the Goblin's Lair represent? To me, this is where things start to break down. Let's look at the lifestyle expenses chart from the basic rules. This table represents the cost per day of living accommodation, food and drink, and all other necessities like the maintenance of equipment. You'll notice that a modest lifestyle is 1 GP a day. Now, to be clear, modest is allegedly the base existence for, quote, ordinary people, including soldiers with families, laborers, students, priests, hedge wizards, and the like. Let's zoom in on one of those words there, laborers, for a second, because those laborers are presumably skilled laborers. And I make that presumption because the poor section includes unskilled laborers. Unskilled laborers, which I would imagine are what make up most of the economy in this world. And how long does it take to make the money needed to sustain a modest lifestyle? Well, it's very paycheck to paycheck. The D&D basic rules note that a skilled, but not exceptional, artisan can earn 1 gold piece a day. That's it. 1 gold piece per day. Compare that to the most prevalent coin among commoners, which is the silver. An unskilled laborer's earnings per day is 2 silver pieces. And oh look, they can just afford that poor lifestyle where you get to contend with violence, crime, and disease due to your unpredictable, unpleasant conditions. This is consistent across the books. The service rate for a skilled hireling is 2 GP a day compared to the 2 silver pieces for an untrained one. So easy. Earning 1 gold a day, 365 gold would be roughly 1 year's worth of living expenses for an average person. Now, let's try to imagine what an adventuring party of 4 can earn in 1 day of adventuring. What are we going to be rolling on? The individual treasure table. This is designed to determine the treasure an individual creature would have or what has been left behind by its victims. How many times are we going to be rolling? 6. Why? Because you should be doing 6 to 8 combats in a day. And if that seems like a lot, too bad. That's in the Dungeon Master's Guide. You can watch my video on short rests where I talk about that some more. Let's say we fight just 6 1CR monsters and roll 6 times. Here are our rolls on the table. A couple quick math here. Okay, so roughly 8 GP per adventurer in a day. So in a day's work, we've earned what a commoner might earn in a week. That's not too extreme, but again, let's consider that this was for 1 adventuring day within the lowest tier, assuming that we only fought 6 monsters. For fun, let's roll on the treasure hoard table for CR tiers 0 through 4. Oh, okay, so suddenly, for completing 1 quest, we've gained 80 GP per person, which is enough for nearly 3 months of modest living. Again, this is at the lowest level of play. The DM's guide expects that in an average campaign, you will roll on the 0 to 4 challenge rating table only 7 times. Mainly, you'll be rolling on the 5 to 10 table 18 times. And when you roll on that table just once, well, suddenly you're earning years worth of living expenses from 1 treasure hoard. 1 roll. Now do that same roll 17 more times over the course of your campaign. Do you see the problem? Or rather, do you see that attaining gold fails to become a problem? Amassing insane amounts of currency is inherent in adventuring. Again, this isn't how I play, this is rules as written. This amassing of wealth is an expectation inherent in how the game is set up and in how it's reinforced, more than anything by the cost of magic items. Only the wealthiest, that being the adventurers, would be able to drop what are essentially life-changing amounts of gold on things like an animated shield, which could cost a minimum of 5,000 gold. But that's only assuming that magic items can be purchased in your games, and reading the DM's guide, you can make a pretty good argument that they shouldn't be. And without magic items to buy, your gold is going to begin to pile up. I've seen some argue that adventurers should be prone to an exorbitant amount of gold because you should be compensated for putting your life on the line. But soldiers put their lives on the line and they're relegated to a modest lifestyle. Bear in mind that if you can afford an aristocratic lifestyle, the highest tier, you live a life comparable to nobility. And it's not that hard to do. I'm surprised most campaigns don't end with the party simply throwing money at all of their problems. And frankly, if it wasn't so easily ignored, it would be a little immersion breaking. This takes me back to my original question. What is that standard value, 1 gold, supposed to mean when contextualized against the rest of the world? And to be honest, I don't know. It's the cost of living for 1 day, but also you can use it to buy a single empty vial. You can earn 1 gold a day after a day's work, or if you're an adventurer, you can earn 100 gold after a day's work. Use 50,000 gold to buy a small castle or a a potion that makes you really strong for an hour. I find myself constantly frustrated when justifying the amount of money my party should be getting with the supposed reality of the setting. And this frustration is only exacerbated by the myriad of value charts the book gives me, which leads me to the last part of this video. I've tried. I have tried to build a better mousetrap here. I've tweaked values and currencies, floated the idea of passive monetary status. I've grappled with exchange rates and campaign structures, wondered if you can make a money stat. As I was making this video, I had to constantly switch back between 3 main articles across the basic rules, the Dungeon Master's Guide, and also a little bit of Xanathar's Guide. Looking back and forth at all these charts, I would argue that the economic system in D&D suffers from being, well, imperfect. Setting must give way to the gameplay mechanics, which have to give way to practicality, which are then restrained to make the setting believable, but we still gotta use gold, because you want to reward players, and it should grow as they grow, but where they start is already pretty high compared to the setting, and what really is practical? How long are we playing? What level are we? Can my players get too wealthy? And if so, when should that happen? And it's about this point I have to stop myself and say, hey, defeatism does not a DM make. If you play with a cool group of people, they'll understand. No one is going to lose their head over how little or how much gold they're making. Just try your best, shoot for the middle, and when in doubt, it's better to reward your players too much than not at all. I had no real point in making this video other than to say I wish Wizards had spent a little bit more time streamlining and consolidating its charts and its economy. There's no single good reference chart in the books that I can find that gives a quick reference for all the things that can happen in the game. Best I can say is you might have to make one. Here's a chart that I made so that I can quickly try and determine the value I may be awarding to my players. Some good advice I got was just to look at the expenses chart and kind of feel out what your players deserve. And honestly, that's not too bad of an idea. For those of you who still need help, I can highly suggest the Discerning Merchant's Price Guide by Dave Eisinger and Fey Rune Labs. I think I'm pronouncing that right. The Angry GM has a really good article on pricing magic items, and Reddit users J. Robhering, I'm not pronouncing that right, Inalisk and Shinatama have made a great shop catalog for items as well. I will link all 3 below for those out there who need a little bit more guidance. And hey, if anyone has any good ideas for making gold and D&D more palatable, I am all headphones. Get it? Because I don't have ears. The drawing doesn't. Well, that you know of anyway. Shout out to my friend Shane for drawing these very new sleek puppets for my video sets. And if you'll excuse me, for some reason I feel like I have a lot more responsibility to get back to. I'll see you soon.